Marcus had been running on empty for 3 years. As a single father to 8-year-old Lily, he juggled 2 jobs, countless school forms, and the constant weight of wondering if he was doing enough. He'd fallen asleep during math homework more times than he could count, woken up to frantically make lunches at 5 in the morning, and missed more sleep than he could ever calculate. That Tuesday evening, he stood in the hallway of Riverside Elementary School, holding a crumpled permission slip and hoping tonight's parent-teacher conference wouldn't be another reminder of all the ways he was falling short. He had no idea that walking through Mrs. Henderson's classroom door would turn his entire world upside down. There she was, Sarah Mitchell, the girl who had stolen his heart in senior year, the one who got away, the girl he'd thought about 1,000 times over the past 15 years, even though he had no right to anymore. Except she wasn't a girl anymore. She was a woman, confident, radiant, and sitting at the teacher's desk with a nameplate that read, Ms. Sarah Mitchell, 3rd grade teacher. His heart stopped for a moment, and time seemed to bend in that strange way it does when your past collides unexpectedly with your present. Before you continue with Marcus and Sarah's incredible journey, please make sure to subscribe to Kindness Hub, where we share inspiring stories that remind us of the goodness in people. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, and leave a comment below telling us about a time when kindness changed your life. We love hearing from our community. Now let's dive into this beautiful story. Marcus wasn't the same person Sarah had known all those years ago. He was quieter now, more worn around the edges, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't changed. That same gentle kindness she remembered from when he'd helped her study for chemistry exams, when he'd sat with her after her parents' divorce, when he'd believed in her dreams even when she didn't believe in herself. Back then, Sarah had been restless and ambitious. She'd wanted to leave their small town and conquer the world. Marcus had wanted to stay, build something real, create a life rooted in his community. They'd loved each other, but love hadn't been enough to bridge that gap. She'd left for college on the East Coast, and he'd stayed behind. They'd promised to stay in touch, but life had pulled them in different directions, and the calls and emails had eventually stopped. That Tuesday night, they stood frozen in that classroom, staring at each other while the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Sarah recovered first, her face breaking into a genuine smile. Marcus? Marcus Coleman? There was surprise in her voice, but also something warmer underneath it. He nodded, suddenly feeling like that 17-year-old boy again, terrified and hopeful all at once. They talked for a while after the formal conference ended, standing in the hallway while other parents filtered past them. He told her about Lily, about the challenges of raising her alone after his ex-wife decided motherhood wasn't for her. He didn't complain or ask for sympathy. He simply shared his truth with the kind of quiet acceptance that made Sarah's chest ache. She found herself telling him about her own journey, about how she'd gotten the corporate job she'd always dreamed of, climbed to the top, became a CEO at a major publishing company, and had discovered somewhere along the way that success felt hollow when you were celebrating it alone. The conversation ended when the school building began to empty, and they exchanged phone numbers almost shyly, like teenagers again. "I'd like to catch up properly sometime," Sarah had said, and Marcus had agreed, though he didn't really believe it would happen. People always meant well in these moments, but life got busy. He understood that better than most. What happened next surprised everyone, including Marcus and Sarah themselves. Sarah reached out the very next day, inviting him to coffee. Then another coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into dinner. But it wasn't romantic at first, or at least not in the way people might expect. Sarah was genuinely interested in knowing who Marcus had become, and Marcus was fascinated by the woman Sarah had grown into. More importantly, they both discovered something they hadn't expected to find in each other: kindness. Sarah began noticing small things. When Marcus talked about work, she heard the exhaustion underneath the steady tone. Without making a big deal about it, she started sending him articles about job training programs that could help him transition from his 2 low-paying jobs to something more stable. When his regular babysitter canceled one evening and he'd had to skip their dinner plans to stay home with Lily, Sarah simply showed up at his apartment with homemade lasagna and ice cream. She didn't ask permission or make him feel bad. She just wanted to help. Marcus, in turn, began noticing how Sarah talked about her job with less and less enthusiasm, how her smile seemed forced when she discussed her achievements, how she seemed to be searching for something money and titles couldn't buy. One evening, as they sat on his apartment balcony while Lily slept inside, Marcus asked her a question that changed everything. "Are you happy, Sarah?" And I mean really happy, not the kind of happiness that looks good in Instagram photos. Sarah was quiet for a long time. "I thought I would be," she finally said. "I thought if I got the job, the salary, the title, the corner office, that all the pieces would fall into place. But I've been there for 6 years, and I feel more lost than I ever did when I was 22. Marcus reached over and took her hand, not as a romantic gesture, but as an act of simple human kindness. "Then maybe it's time to figure out what you actually want instead of what you thought you were supposed to want." The words were simple, but they landed like a key turning in a lock. Sarah sat with that conversation for days, weeks even. She started volunteering at the school, working with Marcus to help third graders who were struggling with reading. She discovered that she loved teaching in a way she'd never loved corporate strategy meetings. She was helping real children improve their lives in real, tangible ways. And slowly, almost without realizing it, she fell back in love with Marcus. Not the boy she'd known before, but the man he'd become. Marcus, for his part, was undergoing his own transformation. With Sarah's encouragement and support, he enrolled in a training program for HVAC repair, which he could do during flexible hours that worked around his schedule with Lily. It was hard work, and there were nights when he wanted to give up, when the exhaustion felt like too much, when he wondered if he was being foolish to believe he could change his circumstances. But every time doubt crept in, Sarah was there, not to push him or pressure him, but to simply remind him that she believed in him. She helped him study. She watched Lily on nights he had to work late on his practicum. She celebrated his small wins as enthusiastically as she celebrated her own. 6 months into their rekindled connection, Sarah made a decision that shocked her corporate board. She resigned from her position as CEO. She didn't have another job lined up. And yes, she still needed to pay her bills, but she had savings, and more importantly, she had clarity. Within a month, she was hired full-time at Riverside Elementary as a teacher. It paid a fraction of her CEO salary, but when she walked into her classroom each morning, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She felt like she was making a real difference in children's lives, and that mattered more than any bonus or stock option ever could. Kindness, it turned out, had set them both free. By being kind enough to see past their own struggles and recognize what the other person needed, they'd given each other permission to reimagine their lives. Sarah had given Marcus the confidence to pursue better opportunities, and Marcus had given Sarah the courage to walk away from something that wasn't serving her. They'd met each other halfway and discovered that the life they'd both been searching for had been waiting for them all along. A year after that first parent-teacher conference, Marcus was working as an HVAC technician, earning solid money with benefits and flexible hours that actually allowed him to be present in Lily's life. He no longer fell asleep during homework time because he wasn't working himself to exhaustion anymore. He was present, calm, and there for his daughter in ways he hadn't been able to be before. Sarah was making a third of what she used to make, but she was happier than she'd been in a decade. She'd written a children's book about kindness and perseverance that had gotten picked up by a small publisher, and she was working on a second one. More importantly, she was building a life that felt authentic and true to who she really was. Lily had adjusted beautifully to having Sarah around more. She had a father who was present, and a woman who genuinely loved her and wanted to be in her life. She watched her father and Sarah treat each other with consistent kindness, supporting each other's dreams and celebrating each other's victories. She was learning, without anyone having to explicitly teach her, that kindness was the foundation of real love, real partnership, and real happiness. The thing that most people don't understand about kindness is that it doesn't cost anything except maybe a little effort and a willingness to see beyond your own pain. Marcus could have been bitter about his circumstances. He could have felt resentful that Sarah had chosen her ambitions over him all those years ago. He could have hardened himself against the possibility of getting hurt again. Instead, when she showed interest in his life, he opened up. He shared his struggles not as a plea for rescue, but as an honest accounting of who he was and what he was dealing with. And Sarah, despite her exhaustion and confusion about her own life, showed up. She didn't run away when she realized that Marcus was still building his life, still working toward stability. She saw the man beneath the circumstances and the kindness beneath the exhaustion. In return, Marcus saw the lost person inside Sarah's impressive resume and titles. He recognized that her ambitions had been someone else's dream, not necessarily her own. He was kind enough to help her question the life she'd been living, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity and support. He never once told her she was crazy for wanting to leave her job. He never expressed fear about whether they could make things work with her lower salary. He simply believed that she deserved to be happy, and he stood beside her as she figured out what that meant. The story of Marcus and Sarah spread through the school community and then beyond. Other teachers started talking about how seeing someone willing to walk away from success to find purpose had changed how they thought about their own lives. Parents started having conversations about what they really wanted versus what they thought they were supposed to want. The simple act of two people treating each other with kindness had created ripples in their community that they never could have anticipated. But perhaps the most beautiful part of their story is something that people often overlook when they're caught up in the romance of it all. It's not that they fell in love again, it's that they learned how to be kind to themselves. Marcus learned that he was worthy of better circumstances and that asking for help wasn't weakness. Sarah learned that turning away from one path to walk toward another wasn't failure. They gave each other the gift of believing that they deserved good things, and in doing so, they gave themselves permission to pursue them. 2 years after that parent-teacher night, Marcus and Sarah got married on a Saturday afternoon in the school gymnasium, of all places. Lily was the flower girl, and the guest list included other teachers, families they'd helped, and friends who had been inspired by their story. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt, and the reception was full of laughter and dancing. In her speech, Sarah talked about how she'd spent so many years chasing a version of success that wasn't meant for her, and how it took falling back in love with someone from her past to help her find the right path forward. Marcus, in his own speech, talked about how kindness had rescued him from a life of endless struggling, not by fixing his problems, but by helping him believe that he deserved to have them fixed. What's remarkable about Marcus and Sarah's story is that it's not really a fairy tale at all. They didn't win the lottery or inherit money or suddenly stumble upon easy solutions. What they did was simple but profound. They were kind to each other. They looked at a person and tried to see what they really needed instead of what they could get from them. They took risks. They made changes. They supported each other through uncertainty. And here's the truth that their story reveals. Kindness is contagious. When you're kind to someone, really kind, genuinely kind, they often find it easier to be kind to others. When you believe in someone, help them see their own potential, and support them as they chase their dreams, they start to believe in themselves. They start to believe in others too. A single act of kindness can set off a chain reaction that changes not just 2 lives, but an entire community. If you're watching this, there's probably someone in your life who needs to know that you believe in them. There might be someone who's been struggling and could use a little encouragement. There might be someone who's lost, like Sarah was, wandering through life wondering when it's going to start feeling meaningful. You have the power to be the kindness that changes their trajectory. You don't need money or power or influence. You just need to see someone clearly, to recognize what they really need, and to show up for them without expecting anything in return. Marcus and Sarah's story teaches us that the most valuable things in life, love, purpose, community, connection, are built not through grand gestures or lucky breaks, but through the steady practice of choosing kindness. Every single day, every single choice. It might be noticing when someone is tired and showing up with dinner. It might be asking the hard questions that help someone clarify what they really want. It might be believing in someone even when they're struggling to believe in themselves. It might be taking a risk on your own life because someone you love helped you see that you deserved better. Kindness changed Marcus and Sarah's story, and it can change yours too. The next time you have an opportunity to choose kindness, really choose it. Don't just think kind thoughts. Actually show up. Actually help. Actually believe. Because you never know whose entire life you might be reshaping with that single act of goodness. You never know if you're going to be the person who helps someone find their way home to themselves.